It's my pleasure to be here and to come and share a little bit of some of the exciting things we are doing both in the research lab at the University of Tartu, where I work, and at a Promore, where I am working with a team developing methods for using process mining and artificial intelligence for continuous process improvement. And that is what I am going to talk about today. If there is any problem with my sound, or if you cannot see the slides, I believe I am sharing the slides, please let me know.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's all okay, right? Sound is good and the slides are there.
Sound is good.
Okay. So as I said, I'm going to talk about how to use data in order to improve your processes. That's basically the main thing I'm concerned with at the moment. And to illustrate why I believe that this is important, why I have found that in practice this is incredibly important, I introduced to you a real life person I met a number of years ago that I need to keep anonymous, so I'm going to call Edson. No, so Edson is a real life character I met at a financial company somewhere in Europe, who was operations excellence manager at a manufacturing company, and still is. And he had been doing BPM for many, many years. He cares a lot about his customers, about sales, about revenue, about efficient delivery. Like many of you here today, that's his bread and butter. He wants to transform organizations, to make them more customers-oriented, to bring more sales, to bring more revenue. Every week, he sees an opportunity or he sees an issue that he wants to address. One week, he has a question about why are there some production delays in the factory. Another day, he has a concern about the fact that they sell to retail customers and they get a lot of returns, customers returning products for many different reasons. Sometimes because products are defective, sometimes because this is not the product they wanted to order, sometimes because the product arrived too late. And he wants to know why. Why is this happening? Why do we suddenly have more product returns than we had 3 months ago? Another time, they have problem with delivery delays. They are shipping out of the plant on time, but things are not arriving on time. Another day, he has a question about how to improve efficiency by automation. So he just started a robotic process automation program, and he has noticed that he tries to automate certain tasks that are very repetitive, but it's not improving the execution times of the process. And he says, why is this happening? Why is it that I automated some activities and the process is still very slow and inefficient? He has all these questions, and every week he has a different question. And he is not finding answers with traditional methods like modeling the processes. His company had been doing a lot of process mapping, a lot of Six Sigma, and they continue to do it. It's very valuable, a lot of lean. But he continuously has questions that he cannot answer fast enough using these methods. On the other hand, his company is sitting on a lot of data. They have data in their SAP system about all sorts of requests for quotes they get, all sorts of orders, all sorts of customer complaints that are coming through their ticketing system, ServiceNow. He had information about product returns, about shipments, about production that coming from a manufacturing execution system they have in the factory, where they observe how production is progressing step by step for every production batch. Lots of questions. And his problem is, good, I have lots of questions and I have lots of data. How do we connect the two? in a way that is fast, that I can get answers very fast. And this is where we got Edson through a few projects, through a series of projects, step by step, into the field of process mining, which Edson finds is like self-service, data-driven process analysis. So what Edson was doing before, using Six Sigma methods, lean methods, process mapping, interviews, a lot of it, he can now do it faster. He can accelerate it by using process mining. And what process mining allows him to do is to bring data from different systems that he was using, from the ServiceNow system, from the SAP system, from a manufacturing execution system, and put them into a sort of mini small data lake of process data and use it to discover and analyze the processes in the organization. And essentially, what this technology is doing is taking data from these databases of these systems and putting it in some tables, one table per process, where you can see, for example, here their incident management process in their IT department. There are records about every task that has happened in this process. Every time that a ticket was created in the IT service desk, every time it was reassigned to someone, every time we updated, we sent an update to the customer, or we receive a message back to the customer, every time we closed an IT incident, all of that is recorded in one of these systems, in this case, specifically in their ServiceNow system. There are similar tables in their production system, in their SAP system, and in other legacy systems they have. And with this data about activities that have happened over time, Edson was able to put them into a process mining tool, and by means of an analysis methodology, was able to very rapidly discover a lot of problems in the process. And I'm going to explain you some of the things that he managed to do. So the first thing that Edson's team, so it was Edson, and there were about 2 business analysts under Edson and 1 data engineer helping to do data extraction. And then there was a couple of subject matter experts, people from the supervisors in the factory who were participating in this analysis. From the data they extracted from their manufacturing execution system, they were able to rapidly construct process maps or BPMN process models, and that reflected what was happening in their real life. And I'm going to share with you now how their manufacturing process looked like in one of their manufacturing process looked like. This is how they, more or less how they thought their process works. When they drew their process model on a whiteboard, this is how it looked like. But when you look at it from the data using a process mining tool, what you discover is that the reality is very different. And your process looks like this. This is your real BPMN process. Here there is a little activity that I am repeating. There are lots of pathways in your process. There are lots of exceptions. Things happen in many different orders, in many different sequences. Things never happen in the sequence you think it happens. And what the Edson asked their analysts is to find which of these numerous little exceptions that only occur once each, or 5 times each, or 3 times each, which of those exceptions were preventing them from executing their process the way they wanted. So I'm going to show you basically how they did it. They started using the process mining tools to selectively reduce the complexity at different levels. And then on top of this, they started to overlay different performance metrics and change the process in different directions until they found that, there is, for example, here, an activity that is being skipped. And when that activity is being skipped, it is causing us problems down the road. The customer later returns the product because it is defective. It will be very difficult to find these. You know, if you wanted to find these through traditional interview methods, observation methods, investigation methods, you will take a lot of time to find this kind of things. But Edson's team, 2 analysts with the right tools, were able to find this kind of problems that were causing them product returns down the road in a matter of days. And then Edson fell in love with this approach. And nowadays, this company is doing the same thing they did before, continuously improving the processes, transforming the organization. But every time they want to change something because of an issue that they are perceiving, they are using the data to create pictures of the process and to determine which pathways in the process are causing them problems. And that is one of the things that process mining tools provide to you, is the ability to see your process in any notation you want, in BPMN, boxes and arrows, at different levels of details, so that you can know which exceptions are causing you troubles. Another thing that process mining tools allow you to do, and that Edson also found, Edson's team found very useful at the time, was to do a lot of overlay performance measures on top of the process maps that they discover from the data. So on top of the processes, they are able, with process mining techniques, to put in waiting times, durations, number of times an activity is reworked, it's rework loops, and then to combine these visualizations with charts of different types to relate problems in the process at the level of performance measures with different pathways in the process, so that they can easily see that there are some bottlenecks, or there are some rework loops, or some skipped activities that occur very frequently, and that lead to problems in their service delivery. So doing this, they were able to find that, for example, that what they had tried before to automate certain tasks in the past, so they went to some parts of the production line and they introduced new machines to speed up certain parts of the process, that by speeding up one part of the process, they created a big bottleneck in the warehouse, in the factory. And that is why, despite the fact that they were automating, they were not improving the performance of their process down the road. And then they took corrective actions and they redeployed resources, people to the warehouse, and they changed the way they were doing things in the warehouse to then speed up again the process. Another thing that they found very useful in other areas of the organization, particularly in the area of customer service, is conformance checking. When they receive a complaint from the customer, it has to be handled in a certain way. You have to respond, within a certain time. You have to send updates to the customer every so often. You have to get the customer to give you feedback. You have to close the ticket when it's finished, etc. And so they had some models of how the process should work. And then they extracted data of how the process actually worked in ServiceNow and they could compare the two, and they were able to find some deviations where their customer service team was not following the process that they were expected to follow. And some of these deviations were against the corporate policy. So they went and they tried to fix these things. And the fourth thing that Edson found very useful in process mining is that he could then compare how the process worked in different parts of the organization. For example, Edson had a problem that the company delivers in multiple countries. Right? That could be multiple provinces in Brazil. And in some areas, they were producing and delivering in a very timely way, and in others not. So what the analysts in Edson's team did was to take the cases that were happening in one country that was behaving very well, where the performance was very good, and the cases that were happening in another country where the performance was less good, and they were able to compare these two, discover a process map for each of them, and compare them, and then compare the performance measures. And they were able to find certain activities that were being repeated in the country that was performing less well, and then that way they could find the root cause for the performance issues in that country. We call that variant analysis. Edson adopted process mining several years ago, and is still, the team, as I said, does not do any improvement or almost any improvement if they cannot validate it with the data. So they have become a data-driven BPM practice. And this is something that has happened in many different countries, in many different organizations. Edson was in the manufacturing sector, but this kind of technology is very called process mining, is also used very frequently in the financial industry, in the healthcare industry, even in the public sector. We have worked, myself, I have worked a lot with public organizations. Public organizations are very interested about the compliance checking capabilities of process mining. Financial organizations are very interested about customer service and also about compliance. Manufacturing is interested about efficiency, and all these industries are finding something useful to get out of process mining. I am going to illustrate to you another case study we were involved with some of my colleagues, and then in the financial sector, in the insurance industry, we worked with an insurance company in Europe, relatively large to medium size, somewhere below not the largest ones, but among the second tier insurance companies in Europe, 12,000 employees, 16 million clients, 20% of market share in their region. They had introduced a new claims management system for handling claims from their customers. And they were expecting that using this new claims management system, they were going to accelerate the completion of the claims. Quite the opposite. 1 year after introducing the claims management system, they found that their process had become slower. The process for managing claims had become slower. And they actually had some regulations which says that certain types of claims must be handled in less than 30 days. Insurance companies are required to achieve this. If they do not, that they have to pay a penalty to the customer because they were not able to respond to their claim or to decide on their claim within 30 days. And they had lots of ideas of what to do to fix this problem. They could include more incentives. They could outsource certain tasks. They could provide more training to their liquidators who were involved in this claim process. They would change the order of some activities, automate some activities. They had budget to improve it because this was a big problem for the organization. Normally, they would have just jumped and grabbed a BPMS and let's try to see how we automate this to fix it. But they were very cautious about it, and they started by saying, we want to look at the data. One thing that this new claims management system they acquired had is that it had very detailed data about every step in the execution of the process. And then they took that data about every claim and how the claim evolved from one state to another and the activities that were done in every claim and who did them and the details of the claim, and they put them into a process mining tool. And they found, the first thing they found is that they thought the process was very well standardized. The managers had drawn, when they set up the system, they had, together with the analysts, they had drawn very detailed process models and in BPMN, and they had trained everybody in the process. This is how we should do the process, etc., etc. They thought that there were about 20 or 30 different ways of handling a claim, and they were shocked when the tool told them that there were 1,800 different ways in which this process was executed, different pathways. They said, sure, there are lots of exceptions, who cares? But we are pretty sure that the pathways that are captured in our BPMN model are probably 80% of the cases. And they were very shocked because the 5 most frequent pathways in reality only accounted for half of the cases. The other half of the cases consisted of 1,790 something other pathways. So the amount of exceptions were actually 50% of the cases. And of course, all the delays were in that 50%. So then they did a very systematic study, sub-process by sub-process, the claim, the opening, they call it assignment to trustee, assessment, closing. And they got their analysts to analyze every phase in the process and to find in every phase in the process what happens in the cases that are late and what happens in the cases that are on time. What is the difference? And they found about 20 or 30 major differences. For example, if the claim is opened one day after the report, then it has much higher chances of being completed on time. If they do not assess the damage within 7 days of opening the claim, they were sure going to have, they always ended up missing the deadline. So they found a number of things like rework loops, bottlenecks that were happening in the cases that were late and that were not happening in the cases that were not late. They talked a lot. This is where somebody is asking about knowledge management. Of course, once they discovered these things, the analysts started talking a lot with the liquidators, with the subject matter experts of different parts of the process to validate which of these observations they have found from the data were likely to be causing the delays in the process. And they got about 9 different problems in the process that were responsible for more than 80% of the delayed claims. And then that led them to 6 recommendations out of these 9 observations. They nailed down 6 recommendations about what to change in the process. Sometimes it was about moving certain procedures until after the claim was decided, reviewing certain incentives that they were giving to the people on the ground doing the assessment of the damage in the houses for which insurance claims were being lodged. All sorts of different steps to retrain the people who were making phone calls to the customers, give them different instructions. And that way they were able to reduce the number of violations of their SLA by somewhere around 1/3 25% for some types of claims and 27% to another set of claims. Interestingly, a lot of the problems they had were caused by tasks that were taking too much time or repetitions in the process. By eliminating those with these changes, they were also able to reduce a lot of cost, not only the cost of not paying penalties to the customer, but also internal costs of operations. And at the same time, they were able to improve their service, their claims resolution times from something around 22 or 23 days on average to 10 to 15 days, depending on the type of claim. So they were very happy. And later they started spreading this technology to other parts of the organization. One of the things that they were interested in is like, hey, now that we have done all this effort of extracting this data, what can we do next instead in terms of becoming more reactive to changes in the process? And they introduced another related type of technology called predictive process monitoring. Predictive process monitoring, what it does is that it takes data from the same databases they were using for process mining, exactly the same type of data they were using for process mining. They could give it with some additional information to a machine learning engine that is able to learn predictive models. And at runtime, they can export data about claims that are currently being resolved. They could give them as input to these predictive models, to this predictive engine, and the engine will produce a dashboard where for every claim they could see whether the claim will end up on time or the claim will take more than 30 days to complete. And then the liquidators were then able to see, hey, here is a group of claims in a certain region that are going to be late. So maybe we need to reassign someone to that region to make sure that these claims are not late. And they kind of made their process more proactive, more predictive, thanks to this predictive process monitoring technology. Predictive process monitoring is something that is taking in the past 3 to 4 years. In my practice, we are constantly being approached by organizations that are asking us like, can I have a predictive dashboard for predicting delays in package deliveries, for example, in a logistics company? Or can we predict customer complaints? Or in a retail company, they are very interested in predicting returns, particularly because a lot of retailers have moved to e-commerce during the COVID times. And in e-commerce, one of the biggest expenses is handling products that are returned by customers. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of money. So they want to predict that something will be returned so that they can try to do things like, for example, calling the customer and talking to the customer about whether they really need this or they need something else, right? So that they do not return the product down the road. One of the challenges, though, of predictive process monitoring, and this is why it's taking quite some time to really go to spread around, whereas process mining is used a little bit everywhere in the world, that predictive process monitoring is still starting, is that people find that they not only want the prediction, they want to understand why the customer will return a product, why the case will be late. And they want to have not only predictions, but recommendations. What should I do next? What can I do to improve my KPIs? So they want more than predictions. And so we need to wait. We are currently in my research team at the University of Tartu and also in the R&D team at Apomore, developing another type of technology called prescriptive process monitoring. Prescriptive process monitoring is a bit like predictive monitoring. You use predictive models to predict that something will go wrong. But then you also take some knowledge that the subject matter expert gives you to make recommendations to the workers about what to do to prevent a case from being late, or what to do to prevent that the customer returns the product. And so it combines the machine learning part, the data, with the knowledge from the subject matter experts. And that makes it quite a bit of a challenge to develop as a technology. But I will forecast that in 2025 to 2030, you will see a lot of this prescriptive process monitoring technology hitting practice on the ground, for example, in your companies. I'm going to skip in the interest of leaving enough time for questions, but I want to show you where I think that business process management will be somewhere around 2028 to 2030. You have a process and you have lots of data about the process. You know when things go right, you know when things go wrong. And you will have systems that we call automated process improvement systems that will be able to make recommendations to you as a process manager. Like, for example, in a loan origination process in a bank, it could tell you, look, in this task, for some types of loans called consumer loans, it is better to do this task before this task. You can do them in any order according to the process model that you're currently executing in your BPMS. But for this type of loans, when we do it in this order, we get better outcomes. Or, for example, this task, we have found that people skip it when the customer has a previous loan with the bank. So maybe we should make a policy that if the customer has a loan, has got a loan in the past 3 months, we will not do the credit history, and so on. You might say, hey, I have a lot of work in this task on Mondays and on Mondays and Tuesdays, lots of work here, and very little on Fridays. So on Monday and Tuesday, I will move one person from here to here, and on Fridays, I will put them back here. And all of these, the artificial intelligence techniques are going to be able to find those patterns from the data. And I conclude by showing you where do I think we are in the evolution of data-driven process improvement. We have a technology called process mining that is very good at describing the process, discovering the process, finding issues in the process, and telling you what are the possible causes of these issues. We are seeing at the moment, and this is like 2021, increased interest in predictive approaches to BPM, but it's too early days. And we are going to see, sometimes in 2025, this technology that recommends what to do in a case, in the same way that recommender systems are very widely used in the field of electronic commerce nowadays. And somewhere around 2028, God knows, maybe 2030, we are going to see something called augmented BPM, where you can have artificial intelligence crunching your data to recommend to you as a process manager how to improve your business process, and combines knowledge with data to make recommendations for improvement. So to conclude, as of 2021, we are starting our journey worldwide in the field of data-driven process management with process mining. Process mining is nowadays everywhere. Very strong growth we are seeing in Brazil in particular, starting with the larger companies, but more and more medium-sized companies in Brazil wanting to adopt process mining. And we hope that over time, we're going to also see spread in predictive approaches to BPM, and more beyond that, augmented approaches to BPM. I will be happy to answer your questions.
Marlon.
Yes.
Teacher Marlon, thank you for your excellent presentation. I'm sure everyone enjoyed and can learning a lot of many posters here in the chat that they thought the lecture was fantastic. And we have a question here. It's from Thiago Richter. Dumas, can knowledge management be useful for process mining? And he said, for example, in root cause analysis.
Definitely. Yeah, there are vendors of process mining out there that tell you that they do root cause analysis. You will never see me saying that my process mining tool can do root cause analysis. It's false, right? And we all know it. Because the process mining tool can tell you every time that when the customer complains, frequently this is happening. But is that a cause or not? No, not necessarily. You know, it might be, for example, that the tool tells you when you repeat this activity, then that activity, that the customer, that there will be a 30 days delay in the process. But the real cause is not that you are repeating that activity. The real cause might be that somewhere else in the process, not here, but somewhere before, somebody made a mistake in data entry. And then somebody detected it here and tried to fix it. And that's why this task was repeated. And then that caused the delay. The root cause is not that you repeated the activity. Great that you repeated the activity, because otherwise you have done a mistake. The real problem is somewhere in the data entry. Might be because of some defects in the way you are doing your object character recognition, and certain characters are not being properly recognized, and you need to fix them later. And process mining can tell you, you know, there is an issue here, there is an issue here, there is an issue here. Whether it is the cause or the root cause or of your problems, or whether you can change that part of the process, that is where knowledge management comes. So I thank you very much for the question, because it's very important to say that process mining does not and will never replace your brain as a process manager and as a process analyst. What it can do is to make your brain look in that direction where there might be a problem. So it helps you put your eyes in the right place. It does not help you to think. We have to think. Knowledge management will continue to be very important.
Thank you very much. Marlon, I would ask you a question, and you show us this slide. Brazil is always a follower in business process, and how the companies are using the data mining in your companies, in your experience?
In Brazil, you mean? Or in South America, or general?
It can be in Europe. That is large use.
In Europe, companies are getting to the point where every process that is running on a ERP system or a CRM system in the larger companies is connected to a process mining tool. And the managers of this process, the process owner, the process analysts, are analyzing the issues in this process, validating their hypotheses using the data. Now, it's not over. It's not over. There is still a lot of work to do, even in Europe or in US, because a lot of the data in the process is not captured in an enterprise system. So people are doing part of the process in SAP, and another part, they pull out an Excel sheet or Google Docs, and they start doing some calculations, and then they take this number and they put it in SAP. Or people are using ServiceNow to record their customer service process. But in the middle of it, they start sending an email to the customer. They take a document and they start reading it to find out what to do next or how to resolve an issue. So process mining, we're seeing, is being complemented a lot with a very related technology called task mining that companies are installing in the desktops of some workers for a certain period of time, for 2 weeks. And these task mining tools are recording what you are doing in your laptop while you have, or before you open an SAP screen. And then after recording this, using that data and combining it with the data from the enterprise system, we are able to analyze the process deeper and to find that that some people are spending a lot of time looking for information in certain parts of the process. So maybe there we have to improve the information we give to process workers. And a lot of these decisions on what to integrate, what to automate, where to improve are being made using data. And that makes these decisions more reliable. It's no longer about politics and what do I think about the process. It's about what the data is telling me.
Marlon, thank you. It was fantastic. Thank you very much for your participation here with us. And agora nós vamos, thank you very much. We will start to talking in Portuguese now again.
I can say some words in Portuguese. So,
you talk Spanish too.
Ya, sí, hablo español y de hecho me puedo poner las preguntas en portugués. Obrigado você. Si tienen otras preguntas, me pueden encontrar en LinkedIn y se pueden conectar conmigo y preguntarme en LinkedIn. Con mucho gusto les respondo. Obrigado você.
Obrigado, Marlon. Thank you. Pessoal, vamos em frente. Bruna, nós vamos fazer o sorteio agora. Aliás, o sorteio, eu pedi a participação. Se alguém tem uma experiência com data mining, com simulação de processos, que possa compartilhar com a gente.
O Gart não chegou ainda, se você quiser.
Tá, nós vamos fazer, então, pedir a participação dos nossos inscritos. Né? Tem alguém com a mãozinha levantada para contar sua experiência com data mining e com simulação de processos? O link com o nosso palestrante, Marlon. Eu não estou vendo as mãozinhas aí. Marlon, uma pergunta a mais, então, enquanto o pessoal... we can send another question to you. We can ask another question.
Sim.
Igor Ribeiro, in the future, the workflow system could work like a federation and make decisions integrates?
Yes, and it's we already have even done a pilot where a decision that was made like by a decision table in a system run by a workflow management system. We made it use a score that was calculated from the predictive model. So we train a predictive model, we produce probabilities that the customer will complain, for example, and we integrate that probability as a score in the decision table to determine what to do at a given point in time. So that is a very pragmatic way of integrating a predictive model. So you do not make the model make the decisions automatically, but you make it part of the decision that is taken in the workflow management system.
Thank you. And Rigolon is asking, this tool is available in Portuguese?
Very soon. We have German and Spanish are the next translations, and Portuguese will be immediately after Spanish. In fact, if we put in Spanish, we just need to change some letters. Yeah, soon.
And Kelly Frota, thank you for your time, Marlon. What do you think about the role of information management in process mining? I mean, information, data quality is a problem in process. How do you see this point?
I actually do not have an answer to the question. I know that information and knowledge management and process mining needs to go together. You know, data and information and knowledge need to go together, and very often we need to to find ways of having feedback loops between the data and the information and knowledge management. But how to achieve it is a struggle for many organizations. I think we need to start changing the way. On the one hand, we need to make the process mining tools more aware of information management practices, but we also need to make the information managers more aware of what the process mining tool can provide to them. I do not have an answer. I just can agree that is one of the challenges when process mining is deployed in an organization.
Marlon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Após mais de 2 décadas de estrada, nosso software chegou à sua 8ª versão. Foram mais de 7.000 horas de empenho, tempo e energia dedicados. Um trabalho constante para oferecer aos nossos clientes o melhor da tecnologia para a governança corporativa. E para fazer tudo isso acontecer, contamos com um grande time que tem a inovação em suas veias. Nós somos Interact. Somos muitos. Somos diversos. Somos mais de 100 pessoas, 100 famílias, 100 vidas. Mulheres e homens de diferentes origens que se dedicam todos os dias a fazer da nossa empresa uma referência em soluções para a governança corporativa. Interact, uma empresa, mais de 100 corações.
Mudar é preciso. As pessoas mudam, o mundo muda e a SML também muda. Nossa jornada iniciou em 1995. Em 2016, passamos por um momento de fusão e transformação de modelo de negócio e cultura. Porém, o mundo mudou novamente e de forma acelerada. Impulsionados pelo novo contexto, precisamos ir além. SML Brasil agora é ZIV. Queremos descomplicar o complicado, trazer praticidade e fluidez, dar superpoderes a qualquer pessoa que queira facilitar a sua rotina de trabalho por meio de softwares low-code. Ser ZIV é ser pioneiro. Nossa experiência ainda continua a mesma. Continuamos sendo um time de experts que entrega soluções de valor para toda a sociedade. ZIV, uma nova marca, uma nova forma de trabalhar. Mesma autoridade de quem já mudou outras vezes. Mude você também. Se o dia a dia da sua empresa envolve muitas solicitações e troca de informações, a sua rotina deve ser muito cansativa. ZIV veio para acabar com a sua dor de cabeça. Uma plataforma moderna onde você encontrará tudo o que precisa em um único lugar. Temos mais de 400 fluxos de trabalho prontos, divididos pelos diversos departamentos da sua empresa. E tem mais! Você ainda pode adicionar à plataforma suas políticas, procedimentos, instruções, manuais e todo tipo de tutoriais, centralizando a operação da sua empresa. Não só você, mas seus colaboradores poderão executar tarefas de forma mais organizada, simples e fácil, melhorando a comunicação e evitando erros e retrabalhos. Venha conhecer mais sobre a nossa plataforma e descubra um jeito novo de ser mais produtivo. Solicite uma demonstração.